What's up, everyone? I'm Jackie,
And I'm Lindsay,
and we are Women Leaders in Sports Medicine.
here to help you grow your game and own your game.
Join us on Andrea Nunez's inspiring and vulnerable journey to be an MLB strength coach and owner of Zero Excuses. This eye-opening episode taps into the value of sacrifice, dealing with sexism and racism, the importance of exploring your options, but also how to bend and not break, and lastly, building buy-in with your athletes through connection. As Dre says, you can't run from hard work, so you should get used to working hard.
Welcome, everybody, to another impactful episode of Women Leaders in Sports Medicine. We're joined today with Andrea Nunez, who is a minor league strength and conditioning coach for the Angels organization, as well as owner of Excuses Zero, which we'll definitely touch on today. How you doing today, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How y'all doing?
Good, thanks.
Doing
We're
great.
super grateful you're here. So we'll kind of jump right in. Tell us a little bit about what this time off has been like for you, or if you've really had any time off with everything going on with COVID.
It's been a little bit of everything, really. I've had time for myself. I've also been blasted with Zoom calls and
Yeah.
conferences. So
Guilty. Yeah.
100%. So at some point, I'm just like, okay, today's my day. What do I want to do? Do I just want
Good for
to
you.
lay back and watch some TV, or do I just want to go work out all day? Like, it's just sometimes that's needed to keep sanity. And I'm a homebody. I consider myself a homebody, but not to this extent.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you're at work almost 12 hours a day, like on a day off, all I want to do is be home. But definitely, having the option of meeting a friend at a bar or go having dinner with somebody, like, that's an option. And since it's not right now, it's been a little different, but I actually have enjoyed it as far as being home with my parents, because I haven't been able to do that for this long since I moved out to go to college. So in that sense, it's been nice because I've been able to help around the house, yard work and whatnot. That gets me a lot sore than
Yeah.
out. Yeah, so in that sense, I've enjoyed it. My brother was here the first month, and so it was nice to feel like I needed to kill him again, as far as, like back when we were 12 and, we got annoyed at each other.
Yeah.
So that was fun. But other than that, it's been a little bit of everything. Like, there's really good days. There's other days that haven't been as good. Personally, I've gone through some things that, usually you have people that you really use, or use as your support system, to kind of get through the certain things that I've been going through. And when you don't have that, I really don't like pouring my personal issues or feelings on my parents when we're all going through it. So in that sense, it's been nice to just kind of call a friend and whatnot, and knowing that they're still there even though they're not there physically. So it's been a little bit of everything. It's been a little fun. It's been a little frustrating. Eventful, not. And so, but it's been good overall. It's been okay.
Yeah, which is good. I think it's nice you kind of touched on too, like, it's a reality everyone's going through. You're used to having a certain routine, and then all of a sudden this routine's disrupted and you're put in a little bit of a different situation. Like you said, like, it's really nice to be home with your parents and like help them, I'm sure, and I'm sure they appreciate it. But in the same aspect, it's kind of hard when you don't have that person right next to you that you're used to relying on. So it's important you like reach out and call them and everything. So I'm glad you touched on that too, because it's important. Like, nothing about this time's easy, but there are silver linings and positives to it, which is great.
Yeah, I think something that I really do want to touch on is just the fact that we're not alone. We might be, away from everybody, but we're definitely not alone. And I just feel like if someone is feeling lonely, reach out, because we're all going through it. It's not like it's something that, ooh, I don't know if they're gonna judge me. None of that. We're all going through it. Reach out to somebody. Somebody will be there.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. I think what you said is so relatable to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people aren't openly talking about like what they're feeling right now. So I think it's nice to kind of just touch on that, and it's nice to know you're not alone in the feelings. And like for me personally, like beginning of this, I was like kind of annoyed, but I was super motivated and doing way more than I normally do. And then I'm like, I've hit my like little roller coaster every so often. Last week I was just like having a week where I was like, this like is terrible and sucks, but I'm out of it. I'm good. But anyway, I'd love to start getting into kind of the meat of the podcast. And our first question is typically, what is your why? Why did you choose to get into strength and conditioning? And what kind of motivated you to get there?
Yeah, I have two major reasons as to why I got into strength conditioning, or really what motivated me to go into this field. I am 5'8", and I played collegiate volleyball, and to say the least, I am a very short volleyball player, right? You have those that are over 6 foot. And so I knew that if I wanted to be competitive, I had to have some kind of edge. And thanks to a really good strength conditioning coach that I had at the collegiate level and a lot of hard work, I was able to do that. Like a lot of the girls after the game, you're saying high five to them at the end of the game, and all of a sudden, they're looking down and they're like, "What? She can jump!" Like I had no clue she was that short, And so for me, from where I come from, there's not a whole lot of opportunity. So you really have to find that that edge to really help you be noticed. And so for me, it was strength conditioning. And so thanks to that, I was able to compete at a pretty decent level and have fun. It was so much fun being able to compete against girls that are so much bigger than you are. And, a lot of girls that were 6'2", 6'3", and I was out there at 5'8", trying to just pound on them. And it was something that I really wanted to do for somebody else. I'm like, how many underdogs is there that just haven't had, coaching, and they have no clue what their bodies can do? I'm like, imagine if I can help people. And so for me, it was one of those. And I think it might resonate with a lot of other people. I think that's pretty common. And it's just so fun, it's so fun being able to take your body to the very next level, and it also mentally, because once you're able to reach certain things physically, you're like, oh my God, I'm actually pretty good. And so it gives you that sense of confidence, which I really want to help others build. And the second one is, it's very personal. And so the second one is, I think it was back in 2013. I actually was stripped from that volleyball scholarship. And so I was home, and within a month span, I lost both my grandmas. And so it took a really big toll on me, especially because my mom's mom had lived with us since we moved to the States pretty much when I was 6. And so it was just like having a second mom, And so when I would walk in from practice, she'd be there, and she'd be like, "What are you walking at this time?" Or "What happened?" And so not having that anymore really, really took a toll on me. And I think it took a toll on me a lot more before it did mentally. And so what I mean is that I wasn't eating. And when I did eat, it was like I felt sick. Like I was just like, wasn't welcoming in my body. And so I actually decided to go to the doctor, see what was going on. And so he did a bunch of tests, and he's like, everything looks normal. And he kind of, started asking more questions and whatnot. And when he asked, have you been going through any stress lately? And I mentioned my grandma's passing. He was like, wow, your demeanor completely changed. He's like, I'm going to go as far as quote unquote, saying this is some type of depression on some level. He's like, and you need to find something to help you get out of it. And if you don't, we can definitely send you to, a specialist. And so I was like, you know what, maybe that's what I needed, because I just didn't know what was going on. Especially in a Mexican household, you don't talk about, your mental issues that you go through. It's a little like taboo, or at least it was a whole lot more back in the day. And so, it was just one day where I looked at myself in the mirror, and it was just like, this is not who I am. And so I'm 5'8", and at that time I was pushing 125, 130, which I hadn't been since probably elementary school. And so it was shocking. And so to be able to look at myself in the mirror and decide, this is not who I am, I need to go back to who I know I am. And so it was just like, you know what? I'm gonna hit the weights. And so it was just every day consistently for 3 months. I was lifting weights. I was working on agility, speed, whatever came to mind of as far as what I had done during college and during high school. And so I did that for 3 months, and I was back up to 145, 150, and it wasn't even about the weight. It was about the fact that I decided to wake up every day and fight to crawl out of that hole that I was in. And strength conditioning was just that little light at the end of the tunnel that I needed. And it was just something that became a habit, because I was like, it's not about actually lifting the weights. It's not about actually getting stronger, but for me, it was more about just showing the heart that I had, showing my heart that it is strong enough to overcome. And which actually came about my first tattoo. I have a tattoo in the back of my neck. And the symbol of it is strength of the heart. And I just think it's so important, because, you might have somebody that's really, really strong, or, has a bunch of muscle mass on them, but their heart might not be in the right place, And so for me, it's a lot more important for me, for my heart, to know that whatever comes at us, like, we can take it. We can do it as a team. And so for me, it was more about that aspect, as opposed to actually lifting the weights and actually going back up in weight. But it's definitely something that I want to always remember, because that's definitely some of the roots as to why I got into strength and conditioning.
Thank you so much for sharing, that story. Those personal stories and personal trials are not easy to say on like a public platform sometimes. But I think also that like strength of your heart brings such an amazing meaning to strength and conditioning, and just the power of what this field can do for someone else. Yeah. And the fact that you've gone through that struggle, a lot of other people maybe have gone through something similar, and you being able to come into that and say like, hey, I feel you there. And I'm not here to get you strong. Like, I'm here to get you strong in your muscles and your performance and whatever, but like, I want your heart to be in it too. And I think that's an amazing story. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, especially with women coming up in the field, kind of like you touched on, like, oh, I was eating and like it wasn't sitting right for me. Again, a lot of people just don't know the physical manifestations of things like stress or depression. They just associate it with, oh, well, I'm not that sad, so I'm not depressed, or I'm not stressed.
Exactly.
So I really appreciate you touching on that, because I think it will definitely help our listeners reflect on some things and recognize, okay, like maybe if I need a little mental help, I'll go get it. It's normal,
It really is.
Yeah. Everyone goes through similar situations. But to dive kind of right from that into your journey now in the strength and conditioning field, obviously now our listeners kind of know like how it started. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what it's been like for you to get to where you are right now, like with the Angels and having your own organization?
Yeah, I think looking back at it now, this started way before I, decided what I wanted to do as a career. And I mean, way, way before. And as I'm telling the story, you'll pick up why. But so my parents, my family and I moved from Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, which we're originally from, right across the border to a little small town called Sunland Park, New Mexico, which is right next to El Paso, Texas. Mm-hmm. And so, at that point, it was just, God, I hated it. Like, I cannot tell you how much I cried, and I was like, please take me back home. Like, I just want to go back home. And, and so once I knew my parents weren't listening and we weren't going back, it was just it was a moment of, all right, I got to stop, complaining and just adjust to what I need to. And so when I moved to the States, you're going to a country that is not very welcoming and is speaking a language that you don't understand, right? Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, first grade, I was put into a bilingual class. Well, half the time I didn't know what they were saying.
Man.
6-year-olds, you don't know anybody, you don't know the language, you don't have any friends. And so you're just kind of looking around trying to figure out how to survive the day. And so for me, learning English was really tough because I didn't understand why there was a letter in a word that didn't need pronunciation.
Yeah.
When you pronunciate every letter. And so I was like, why is it there? It is not there. Like I had the hardest time writing R. Like, how are you? I would always spell it AR. And then I had to do it about 100 times before I understood the E at the end. Like you did not pronunciate. And so, really having that story and being able to empathize with all the Latino players that we have on the team. Because let me tell you, if you have worked with a Latino and you yourself don't know Spanish and you're trying to coach them up, if they're going like this, well,
they're like,
they have no clue what you're saying. And I've been there because you're so frustrated because you're like, I don't know what you're saying, but just so that they can move along, right? Like I've been there. And so I feel like that was a setup as far as to what I have to deal with, what I have to help the guys with now. And so I really empathize with them as far as that goes. And so, going from living in Mexico, which is, I don't know, as far as the entire country, but Ciudad Juarez itself is the leading city and femicide in Latin America. And so from a really young age, I had to deal with sexism, and people trying to tell you like what you should be doing. And unfortunately, in the Mexican culture, from a very young age, and not so much now, but especially back in the day, it was very much you're here to serve a man, period. So it was like you cook, you have kids, you get married, you're a stay-at-home mom, wife, and that's it. And you have no other option. And they really made you feel like you had really no other option and you were just someone's property. And so in Mexico, you hear some horrible stories about, the way they kill women. And it's just like, it is very infuriating. And so for me, having to deal with that type of mentality and then coming over to the States and then having to deal with racism, it was just something that was just like, oh, great. So in my country, I'm hated for being a woman. And in the States, I'm not liked because of the base of my skin color, and so it was just, and for being a woman, so it was just something that I definitely had to get used to real quick. I had to build thick skin from a very young age. And so, when people ask me today, have you dealt with this comments or these comments? I'm like, I promise you, any comments that I've had made today or, during my time with the Angels are nothing compared to anything I've dealt with before. And unfortunately, right, like I shouldn't have to say that, but thanks to those experiences that I've had, I have the skin to be able to be in a field where it's, mainly men. And so I feel like, again, that set me up for where I am today. And so kind of moving on forward, when I was in high school, I found out that you could get a scholarship, right? And so I was really, really determined to get that scholarship because I wanted to get out and I wanted to really expand from the Southern Park and El Paso area, just to look for new opportunities. My thinking has always been, I can go to the other side of the world, and if it doesn't work out, I can always come home. Home is always an option. But if you don't explore, you're never going to know what other options there are. So if you have one that's secure, leave it, which is home, And so for me, it wasn't easy because in the Mexican culture, women don't leave unless they're married. Like unless you have kids or you're married, you just don't leave for the sake of your education. It's not something that's very common. And so, my grandma, she's very old school, right? And because she's so old school, it was very hard to explain to her, like, my parents are not abandoning me. They're not kicking me out. I am willing to leave this household.
I am going.
Yes. And so it was very hard for her to understand. She was like, no, I'm sure they're paying you to tell me this. And I was like, no, I promise you they're not. But it's because of that Mexican culture where you just don't leave. And so I really had to, again, go out of the norms and in order to chase a dream that I wasn't sure what it was yet. And so once I got to college, and I played collegiate volleyball and I was able to work with a really good strength conditioning coach, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome, right? And so my junior year, I went to Houston, Texas, because my brother had just moved there. And so I was like, why not? I'll go and, I have my brother there and whatnot. And so I went ahead and went to Houston and I searched on Google, literally, I searched the best athletic development company in Houston, Texas. And the first one that popped up was the name Dynamic Sports Training. So I went ahead and sent my resume and whatnot. And it was an unpaid internship. And so, but it was so much fun. And so I did this internship, and that's where I met my mentor, Lee Fielke, who's one of the owners of Dynamic Sports Training in Houston. And he's very, very intellectual. And so anytime that you talk about a concept or anything, he always wants to know why. Because he understands that there's a lot of perspectives, but he wants to understand why. Why did you pick this exercise? Why did you program it this way? Why did you coach him up like this? And so it really made me dig deep as far as like why I was doing certain things, which I still do it today. And so I was really, really into it and whatnot. But because it was unpaid, I did the internship from about 5:30 in the morning to around 2:00. And then I was a server at a very upscale restaurant in Houston from 4 to 10. And I did that pretty much all summer. And I would not trade it for the world. Like people might think like that's a horrible schedule. It was. They are right. It was so much fun. I mean, my eyes were down to here during that summer, but I was having so much fun that I just didn't care. And so it made me realize that you got to put in the work and sacrifice certain, comforts to be able to get to where you want to be. Like, I'm sure everybody can resonate with this, but I've slept on so many couches just to be able, to get some rest, to be able to keep chasing a dream. And so I just think that it really helped me adjust and made me realize that you got to give up certain things, to get other things out of whatever you're looking for. And so I really made a great network there. And after college, life happened. And so I wasn't able to start at DST right off the bat. And so went to Hawaii and I was living in Hawaii. And so I was working with, my last months there, I was working with Mililani High School boys and girls volleyball. It was really, really fun. It was kind of a strength conditioning / volunteer coach. It was really, really fun. So I was able to travel with them, getting warmed up for the game and then like work on recovery after. And because you don't see that very often, a lot of people in Hawaii were like, who's that?
Yeah.
And it's funny enough because if you like when I was in Hawaii, if I did not speak or open my mouth because of my hair and skin color, they thought I was Samoan. And so the second I spoke, they were like, where are you from?
Wait a minute.
And so I got away with it a little bit. And, the Hawaiian culture, they're very welcoming, but they definitely want to know who you are and what your values are before they let you in.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to be able to, get into another culture that was a little bit different from mine, it really helped me see other perspectives. And it made me appreciate, taking me out of my comfort zone and really being in somebody else's world. And so as far as that goes, I was able to really learn that there's so many beautiful cultures that you really just have to be open-minded as to what their beliefs are, because just because they're a little different doesn't mean they're wrong. And so it just means they're different. That's it. And so if you're able to learn from them, you can really take a lot in. And so I was able to, learn as to why they do certain things and whatnot. And that really made me appreciate or help others today welcome, all the cultures of the Latinos that we have on the team. And so I just feel like, again, like it was a setup for stuff that I have to deal with today. And so finally, while my last couple of months in Hawaii, while doing that, I got a call from Lee, and I always checked in to see what was going on and see like certain things like, hey Lee, like I'm trying to get this certification. Is it a good one? Like what you suggested? And so just updating us to what was going on. And Lee let me know that he had been hired by the Angels as the big league strength and conditioning coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, that's awesome. Like that's amazing. And so he was like, well, actually, I wanted to ask you if you want, to coach because there's a position open. And I was like, what? Where do I sign? And so
keep your composure.
Yeah, exactly. I think I kind of looked at my phone and I was like, wait. And then I reread it. It was really just exciting to have even that option. And so, I went ahead and did the interview and whatnot. It was a little bit different than any other interview that I had. Obviously, being a woman coming in, I mean, you all know this. We've been women our whole lives, right? But other people haven't, necessarily had that exposure of a woman coach. And so, I understood that there were certain things I needed to know and whatnot. And so, I did the interview, and then after that, the interview I think happened at the beginning of December 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't get a call back till December 31st. And I thought that was their way of like laying me down slowly, letting me know that I didn't get the job. And so, but December 31st, Ryan Crowan, who was the man who hired me, he called me, he gave me my offer, let me know, I had been not selected. And that's when I really had to work on my, just staying calm and really just maintaining composure. And, he told me my offer, he said, take a couple of days to think about it and just call me back. And from the get-go, I was like, there's nothing to think about. I am in. And he said, no, Dre, like just take a couple of days. And I was like, Rowan, there's nothing I need to think about. But, he's a professional. And so he's like, I'm going to give you a couple of days anyway. And then just call me back. I was like, all right, great. And so as soon as I hung up the phone with him, I called my parents, and it was just that sense of relief of like knowing that all you had gone through made sense. Like it was worth it. And it really took me back to my first scholarship offer. Like the first time I saw the scholarship offer, and I was sobbing, I was excited, and I was like, yes, like this is the start of something awesome. And it was just that same feeling of knowing like, wow, like this is actually happening, and everything that I've gone through is making sense now. And I apologize for all the complaining I ever did about any challenge that had gone my way, because it was obviously setting me up to be where I am today. And so I just think it started so long ago, and especially because I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and I have 2 older brothers. So I've been the only girl for a while.
Yeah.
That's nothing new. And I just think, little things in life have absolutely set me up to where I am today. And here I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. You touched on so many different, even just advice in your journey, and wrapping it all up with saying like, all of it was worth it. All of everything you went through, the good, the bad, the ugly, the great, like it came together to where you are today and was worth it. I think you touched on a lot of different things. Like you've touched on a bunch of obstacles that you've faced and you've overcome. And you've also touched on advice for people coming up in the field. Like sometimes you need to explore and get outside of your comfort zone in order maybe to realize what you're made of, but to grow. Right. Yeah. And we hear it a lot, but this is a perfect example of why it might be pertinent to do that. And also just how being in different cultures and seeing things from different perspectives actually prepared you to work in the culture you are now, the culture of baseball, right? And then last but not least, you even touched on like how you regularly, like just checked in with your mentor, like asked him for advice, see what he was doing, things along that line. And then it led to him calling you one day and saying, hey, by the way, I got this job. Maybe would you be interested in something similar? So I really love how you tied all of those different pieces together into your journey. And I know our listeners definitely do too.
I just think that they're all part of becoming who, who I want to be. And I know I'm a far away from that, but it's definitely been a part of why I've been able to take on what I deal with today. That's why I said, like, especially if any Mexican moms roast you from the second you're born. Like they're like, oh, she's too pale, oh, she's too this, right? And so because they roast you from a young age, like you're just bound to grow thick skin anyway. And so just having more challenges to do so in the long run, it helps. It really does. And even if it's just a challenge that you think is so hard that you're bound to break, bend but don't break. And so it's just like with strength conditioning, unless you take your body to the next level and you feel like you're gonna die, it doesn't adapt, right? So
right,
think about it that way. Just think about it that way. You're just working out, your stress levels so that the next time that you're stressed, you've adapted and then you can take on a little more and it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think on piggybacking off of all of this, listening to your story and taking it back to your why of like why you even started this, like you've always led with strength of the heart, right? And I think that's probably showed throughout your whole journey from the first time you cold called someone and said, hey, like, let me hang out with you and learn from you, to all the way to now in that first interview, and now you're working with the Angels as one of the unfortunately few strength and conditioning women in baseball, but also one of the maybe first or few in the Latina community that's working in that. So I know recently you won the minor league strength and conditioning coach of the year for your league. What do you feel like maybe got you recognized? Because I know in one of the calls that we had together, like you didn't even know you were on the radar for that, right? So what do you feel like you did or portrayed, or what's different in your style of strength and conditioning that maybe like got you on that radar?
So the only reason why I know this is because one of the Indians strength conditioning coach actually reached out after they had announced the winners and told me why he voted for me. So like I told you in the last call,
that's cool.
It really was, because
that's freaking awesome.
Because when I got the news, I was like, what? Because you have a voting that's peer based. And so because of certain experiences that I had before in the past with introducing myself to strength conditioning coaches, I just wasn't a big fan of it. And I know I have to work on it. I need the listeners to know that that's not okay. You can't just ignore the introduction, because at the end of the day, like, it's networking, right? But because, for instance, and I'll say this because I think it's fair for the listeners to know that the first couple of times that I introduced myself to the other strength conditioning coaches, and obviously I won't say what organizations, but went ahead and let them know it was during spring training, and I went up to them, introduced myself to them, that I know strength conditioning coach, and that if they needed anything, I was there to help them, and if they needed it to use the facilities, whatever they could need, like, I could help them. And some of the questions I got were, "Oh, so you're a volunteer coach? Oh, so you're an intern?" And I was like, no.
No.
I'm a full-time strength conditioning coach, and I just left it at that, right? And so for me, because my mom says that I have mecha corta, which means a short fuse. For me, just leaving it at that was a win. And so being able to just not go any further than that was a win for me. But I know that I have to work on it, because the more I don't, these strength conditioning coaches, don't learn. And so I could have totally, looking back at it now, I could totally been like, no, man, I just got hired and, kind of gone into X, Y, and Z. But because of those questions, I was really like, I don't really want to do the introduction pregame. And so when they announced the winners, I was like, how do these people even know my name? Because I never introduced myself.
Yeah.
And so the only coaches that I knew were those who texted me offering their facilities. And so, before the game, I would go up and introduce myself, because they had started the conversation. And it was only a few of them. And so when I got the news, Mo Cuevas from the Indians went ahead and texted me and reached out, and he was like, "Hey, congratulations! I just want to let you know I voted for you. I feel like you represented strength conditioning coaches the best, and it seemed like you have a great connection with your players." And so for me, it was huge because I personally consider myself a very average strength conditioning coach who happens to build great connections with players. And so I might not be the most intelligent or whatnot, but I am so hardworking. Like anything that I can make up with hard work, I will do. And so I try to make a great connection with my players and, make sure that they're ready for the game, but also that they're having fun. I'm making sure that, they're following through whatever their pre-game routine should be. But again, also making sure that they're getting that competitive mindset ready. And so we might be a little loud. We might be laughing a whole lot. People might think I have a shit show going on. I have no clue. And so, but they're ready, And so for me, I really appreciated him reaching out and letting me know why he voted for me because I had no clue people even knew my name.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole story of like him coming back and commenting on your ability to connect with your athletes, I think is a really good message to younger individuals coming out in the field. Cause I think there's, like when I get students sometimes, or when I interview people, they like, I want to be the best at this skill. I want to be the best at this. And I find myself mentoring and discussing more with them. Well, like, how are you connecting with that person? Like, what are you doing to make sure that patient or that client is not only bought into you, but like having a good time with you? You know what I mean? And I kind of resonate with that idea of like, sometimes I think other people look at how I'm with my patient and they're like, what is she doing?
Yes.
I remember this, like the first time my current boss hired me, I was so excited to like just get going. It was brand new and I was with a patient and he's like kind of a calm guy. And I just remember we were like belly laughing, like crying, belly laughing. And he's just like, he's working on a patient. He slowly looks up at me and it's like, what is going on? But I'm still there today. You know what I mean? So I love how you kind of are touching on the importance of connecting with your athlete, and your energy gives them energy, right? So there's like shit show moments, like they're getting totally amped up for the game, like they're ready to go. So I love that you commented on that. That's amazing, and congratulations on that award as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome. But kind of going off that a little bit, I mean, yeah, Jackie and both of you, I mean, touched on like how important it is to just be with the person in front of you, right? And like you need to build a relationship with them in order to provide like good care or programs or, whatever you're doing. So anyone in the field really, or any field. Yeah. But going off of that, do you have any like interesting or like a funny moment of maybe just like working in sport?
Yes, I have a ton of them, right? But
yeah.
I'm gonna pick two of them. And so the first one, I hope y'all can understand me, but so backstory is we have a Dominican player who has limited range of motion on his throwing arm, and it's just one of our strength conditioning coaches. It was during extended, so there's two strength conditioning coaches there. And so, we're finishing up a lift and whatnot, and we're just kind of shooting the shit with the guys. And so, strength conditioning goes up to him and he's like, why can't you extend your arm? And so in full confidence, our Dominican player goes, you see me when I was young. And then he paused and he looked at me and he goes, yo me quebrader el hambrader porque yo me callator. And so I was dying because I was like, what happened to your English? And he goes, great, the Wi-Fi went out. I was dying as to when he said the Wi-Fi went out. And so that's when he said that his English, was limited. And I was on the floor dying because I just thought he was so good with his English at the start, and then it just went away completely. And so that was awesome. That's a story I would always tell. Yeah. And, the fact that he just decided to add "ater" to everything at the end to make it sound like English just makes it a whole lot better. And then just going off the same things about, building connection with the players. So I was in the bullpen during spring training, and I was getting the pitchers ready to go into their outings. And I have a player who will not, for the love of God, shut up. Like he's just continuing like talking and talking. And I was like, man, if you shut up for 5 minutes, I'll give you $50. And he goes, oh, bet. And I was like, yes, I got it. Right? So I start my stopwatch. I start it, and then he goes, no, and then I start the watch, and then 27 seconds pass by, and he looks at me and he goes, "Oh no, Dre, I can't do this. You know what it feels like to feel alive? You have to talk to feel alive. You have to feel good. You have to talk. You have to let it out." And I was like, "I am done with you. Like, I need to get out of this bullpen right now. If not, I'm gonna slap you across the face because he would not shut up for a whole straight 20 minutes." Like, and I understood it was because he was nervous because of spring training.
Yeah.
And I understand he needed to leave some nerves from his body, but I was just like, bro, this ain't it.
Yeah. We gotta find a new way.
Oh my God. Like even your funny stories, I feel like come back to like how well you like interact with your athlete.
I'm pretty sure that the rest of the people outside that bullpen were like, what is going on in there? Like,
you're over here like making a bet with someone right before spring training. I love it. Well, kind of like going into that, like I'd love to kind of get into some pieces of advice that you would give someone coming into either this field or wanting to get maybe into professional sports, because I know the questions we get a lot are, like, how do you get buy-in with a male athlete? How do you make your way to this? What do you do when this obstacle faces you? So what are maybe 1 to 2 pieces of advice that you would like really strongly love to give like our community working to get into this field?
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that athletes are humans. And so, for instance, if you go and you start just a relationship or friendship with somebody, you get to know them first, right? You get to know the person, like you said, that's in front of you first. Like for instance, when you want to talk to your mom about, whatever, letting you go out when you're 15 years old, and you start off with, "Hi, mom, how was your day? And you look beautiful." And like you start like with that sugar,
preparing
right?
them, yeah.
And that's exactly what you have to do with your athletes. I'm not saying I have it 100% figured out, because I don't. I can't say that I have 100% buy-in from all the guys, because I don't. But I think I have a pretty good sense as to what the guys who have bought in enjoy. And so, you start a conversation about their family, about what they're from, where they're from, what they like to eat, what music they listen to, whatever it is, except for what your field is. So, I'm not going to touch on strength conditioning unless they start bringing it up, or unless I build some type of relationship with them. And I'm telling you, I still haven't gotten figured out. Sometimes I forget that not just because these guys have bought in, it doesn't mean that the next guy who walks in through the door is going to buy in automatically just because I've done work with these guys. And so every athlete is a work in progress, and so I think people forget that it's hard work, and it takes its time, building buy-in. But once you do, it's awesome, because now you can talk shop, and you can, you keep that relationship with them, and then they ask, well, why, Dre? Like, what if
For
I do this exercise as opposed to this one? And then you start a conversation, and you're like, well, you know what? You could do that exercise as opposed to this one if you want. And then, they're part of their own process. And so I really do think that it's connection over knowledge first, every time. And it's going to be different for every athlete. You're going to have athletes that really just want to get right into it, and they don't actually care if you care. And then there's other athletes that don't give a shit if they don't know you. And so just building that connection with your athlete is going to be very important for buy-in. And honestly, athlete buy-in is a lot easier than staff and coach buy-in. So especially in baseball, you don't you don't have a team. Like, when people think of like the NBA, they have one team.
Mm-hmm.
And so baseball is so different because you have so many different levels and moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and again, I don't have it figured out. And I'm a very straightforward person. That doesn't resonate with some people at times because I can't go in and be like, well, I think your idea sucks. Like, I can't do that, right? Because I wouldn't appreciate if they did that to me. So I have to take a step back and really just start by playing off pieces by pieces and doing the same thing with them. But sometimes I forget, I forget that, again, like, just because this coach believes in what I do doesn't mean that this new coach is automatically going to give me the benefit of the doubt. So just knowing that just because you've done this with these athletes that have bought in, it doesn't mean your job is finished. Like, your job is always gonna have to start over with every new athlete, and that's okay because it makes it so much worth it once they do get buy-in. That's as far as being in the field. But I feel like on a base level, vulnerability, humility, and work ethic for me have been great, and I just think that, like I said in one podcast that I did in December, one little 7-year-old, I was talking to them about being humble. And he's like, well, Dre, I don't know what that means. And so I was like, how do I put it in simple terms? And so I was like, okay, I got it. I was like, being humble means knowing your worth, but knowing that you're above or nor beneath anybody. Like, that's it. That's it. And, being vulnerable, you'd realize that being vulnerable, you're just being human. Like, that's it. And so a lot of people, especially like myself, I think it's important for me to say my first month with the Angels was very not so much frustrating, but eye-opening because I had so many people like telling me the no-nos of baseball that I forgot that these guys were human. And so I had no clue how to approach them because I was like, oh, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do. And so I was just like, I was just, super taken back. And when I realized that if you're just human, like if you're just vulnerable and if you just know that, whatever you do, whether you do it right or wrong, like it's going to teach you the right way. Like, for instance, because I was in a high school setting, everybody called me Coach Dre. And so when I was introducing myself to the baseball players, I was like, hey, this is Coach Dre, and then they're like, what? And so you don't do that. I didn't know you didn't do that at the professional level. And so they were like, hey, you just tell them your name. And so I was like, oh, like, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know that. And so, just being able to know that it's okay to make mistakes. Like, it's okay to be human in the professional setting. But first and foremost, like, nothing is ever going to replace hard work. Like, your work ethic has to be amazing because, as you all know, anybody on the performance side, we're probably always going to be the first ones there and the last ones to leave. It's like you can't run away from hard work. So you might as well get used to working hard. And I think those are, the biggest piece of advice that I have for our listeners.
Yeah, those are great. And I think you kind of going back to your first piece of advice, I think you gave something that is really relatable to people because I think all the time we hear like, learn how to communicate and communication and connection is the most important thing. But I think some people just like, they're like, yeah, but like how? I don't know. And like you taking it back to just like this family idea, like we all have that experience being a teenager and like knowing how to like butter up mom versus dad, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's just like a really clean thing for people to understand and just be like, oh, like know how they tick to know how to make them perform or get, the thing that you want. So I think that was a really relatable kind of piece of advice. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you keep on saying, like you gotta know who you are, be a human. It's okay to make the mistakes and, people will understand that eventually. So thank you.
Yeah, that was great, Jay. So if our listeners want to find a little bit more, maybe like about you or follow you or find out a little more about Excuses Zero, where could they do that?
Well, I'm more interactive with my Instagram. They can definitely follow me at Excuses Zero _ on Instagram. I also have a Twitter, which I mainly use because Twitter has so many, news. I found out more through Twitter than, through other resources as far as what's going on in baseball. And so also do have a Twitter. And, through those, if y'all want to reach out, and I can always send my email so that it could be a more personable conversation if anybody else has any questions.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for this conversation. It's probably been one of the most vulnerable and real ones that we've had. And I think our listeners are going to appreciate hearing from that a ton, because I think sometimes in the performance and strength and conditioning world, people feel like they need to put on this smoke screen, don't see who I am. So thank you so much. And I hope to keep connected with you in the future. And Andrea is a part of our mentor program. She's a part of our network. So stay tuned, everybody, to see what we have in store for you guys.
You guys are awesome. And I thank you all for having me on. As I mentioned to Jackie, when I first got the news that y'all were starting this network, I only thought I had podcast potential, and now after talking to her, she said that I have mentor potential, so I'm excited.
Yes, she does.
Oh,
yes, she does, and I'm excited.
Thank you for listening to the Women Leaders in Sports Medicine podcast. This podcast is for you to take a step closer to your dreams. Visit www.womenleadersinsportsmedicine.com to join our roundtables, learn about our mentorship programs, and to let us know what you want to hear. Have a great day, and remember, it's your time to lead.